Steven Universe started out as a very lighthearted show, but over time, its dramatic backstories and dark twists took it to a much more serious place. By seasons 4 and 5, the story was still built on lighthearted episodes, but it was harder to take those seriously with the doom and gloom hanging over our heads. But now that the main story is wrapped up, Steven Universe Future is able to reset the playing board and bring us back to those really humorous, lighthearted episodes that made us fall in love with the show in the first place. My name's DEEPCUT, and this is my review for the 2 latest episodes of Steven Universe Future, Bluebird and a very special episode. 2 episodes that I think are some of the best in the entire series as far as standalone episodes go, as well as the most funny episodes we've seen in a long time. The first episode, Bluebird, opens with Steven filming a commercial, inviting every gem who needs help changing to come down to Little Homeschool to learn how. Afterwards, he falls victim to several failed pranks, like a sign on his back that tells people to say he smells good, his juice box being swapped with tomato soup, and piles of toilet paper on his car. At first, it seems like Peridot might actually be behind this, but as soon as he gets home, he finds that there is a new gem in town. The new gem is simply called Bluebird, but that isn't just a random nickname like Volleyball was. Which, wouldn't you kind of be offended if you were nicknamed Volleyball by some punk because his mom abused you so hard it cracked your face? But I digress. Bluebird is actually short for Bluebird azurite, and while a lot of people knew this gem was a fusion, some thought corruption might also be affecting her because of the colored spots. But that is actually just what real Bluebird azurite looks like, mostly blue with a hint of red spots. I think this was a really smart choice for the fusion design and name because I think it speaks a lot to the actual characters. It's hard to imagine Aquamarine actually wanting to fuse with another gem after what we've seen of her in previous episodes, but if she was going to fuse, I do imagine that she would be at the forefront, being in control of the actual fusion, with someone like Ruby just making decisions around the edge, not being as involved. The differences between their colors, instead of blending them together, shows that they're still very distinct and not quite in sync. Steven notices immediately that this fusion is the 2 gems who really had it out for him before, as I mentioned, Aquamarine and the Eyeball Ruby. And I'm grateful for that. In earlier seasons, they might have tried to play it off as the characters being suspicious of this new fusion, but not quite being able to piece together who it is, and that is always really annoying when that happens. The other gems noticed who she was too, but unlike Steven, they are unconcerned. While he thinks Bluebird has it out for him, the others believe she's just here to get a great start at a new life, and Steven is just being paranoid. What is interesting about this is that it is actually the inverse of a plotline used in an earlier season. Back in season 4, another Ruby came to Earth claiming to want to live there, and Steven truly believed that she could be sincere. No one else really believed it, particularly Lapis, but Steven was disappointed to realize they were tricked. It seems that Steven has learned from this mistake now though, and isn't as trusting as he used to be. He does eventually cave enough and tries to accept that Bluebird really is just trying to be nice, just getting things wrong as she doesn't understand how humans work. Steven tries to accept her, but she is doing suspicious things at every turn, all of which turn out to be innocuous, like holding a knife for a cake, or pinning Garnet to the ground to help her stretch. The funniest moment is when Steven starts finding terrible artwork of himself hidden around the house. He complains to Amethyst about how terrible it is, only to realize that it was her artwork all along, and she runs away crying. Just when Steven begins to believe that Bluebird really is good now, she of course abducts Steven's dad and holds him hostage. In the second funniest moment of the episode, the 2 unfuse to reveal who they really are, and Steven has to condescendingly inform them that he knew who they were all along. This Team Rocket knockoff decides that if Steven doesn't burn down Little Homeschool, they're going to kill Greg. But he manages to pull a Sakura and uses Ruby's own chisel to cut his hair and fall to safety. Interesting side note, Amethyst changed her hair to look like Greg's according to flashbacks of how Greg and Rose met, but his hair after cutting it seems to resemble Amethyst's original hair from when she first formed in the kindergarten, and again when she was rejuvenated. Coincidence? Doubtful, but does it mean anything important? Also doubtful. I was pretty surprised that Steven didn't use his healing powers to fix Greg's hair. If it can do something like heal Connie's eyesight, couldn't it even bring back hair that was on top of his head? And on that note, with Steven's powers, why isn't he accidentally healing his food?
Like, we see he can make an entire bouquet out of a single flower broken at the stem. Why isn't he creating an entire bundle of carrots when he eats this one? If he ate a boiled egg, would he heal it and spit out a baby bird? Think about it. Anyway, Steven decides to go full pink and start fighting. Once again, as short as the fight scenes are, they are really a lot more fun to watch than they were in previous seasons, at least in Season 1. Pink Steven manages to beat the two of them up, and they try to fuse again to defeat him. They fail miserably at that, and really, it's surprising that they were able to stay together for as long as they did. This episode would have been pretty funny if the whole time Steven was purposely tripping them up and watching them slightly unfuse before barely pulling it back together and pretending like nothing is wrong, like they enjoy being fused. The two do eventually fuse again, however, over how much they hate Steven, and we get to see this fusion weapon, some epic ice sword, and they can shoot more of them too. Between the sword and those sick wings, this fusion is actually really cool. Steven still manages to beat them down though, and they fly away promising to cause trouble on another day. In the end, Steven learns an important lesson, that while everyone may be capable of change, not everyone's going to want to change. One gripe I do have with this episode, however, is that it does weaken the lore of fusion a bit. We are at a point in the show where characters are fusing with virtually no dancing to synchronize. While you can argue that the characters are getting better at being naturally in sync, our main characters, who were some of the few gems in the history of the universe to actually enjoy fusing with each other, still needed to do elaborate and long dances to fuse after thousands of years of practice. Now two gems who never fused before, like Ruby and Aquamarine, go from not being able to fuse one moment to an instant fuse the next because of one emotion. Garnet just touches Pearl and Amethyst to become Alexandrite in this episode, something we knew was rather difficult for them to pull off before.
Despite that, I personally love the wacky and humorous elements of the episode. I definitely don't want to see more episodes like this as we approach the finale, but we are still in the first act of this new series, and it is the perfect time for them. After the doom and gloom of the previous season, it's nice to just have things be fun again.
Another thing that bugged me until the end though, was how these two characters with very serious histories were seemingly getting a very humorous wrap-up. Thankfully, it's been left open that they can return again. Perhaps they'll have a sequel episode in the second half of the season where we see a more serious approach to their characters and their final arcs. Or maybe, what we see is what we get. Two people who are fusing just out of hate and having an enjoyable time because of it. It's also an important lesson for kids to learn, so maybe it's not the worst place to end this story here. As Greg said to Steven at the end of the episode, everyone can change, but not everyone wants to. The next episode is titled A Very Special Episode, and it's perhaps one of the funniest in the entire series. The only episodes more funny than this one are probably Hit the Diamond, and everyone's favorite episode, Uncle Grandpa. Like that episode, this one turns out not to be canon once you get to the end of it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The episode opens with Rainbow Quartz 2.0, who I will hereby refer to as simply Rainbow Quartz to save time. In the episode, he is playing with Onion, who of course is doing weird onion things. Yeah, like that. One really cute moment though is Onion blowing a kiss to Rainbow Quartz. He seems to really like Rainbow Quartz, writing messages to him and the like. I think he may even have a crush on him. Rainbow Quartz unfuses when they get a call from Garnet, and Steven realizes that he promised to do a home safety geminar as Sunstone that day. When Steven explains that he is busy, Garnet gives a funny response explaining that she can just show the gems all the possible futures where they die. This is where you begin to realize that the events of this episode didn't really happen. While the humor is all stemmed from the characters' personalities, which I love, it is a bit extreme. The rest of the episode is about Steven running back and forth between Garnet and Pearl, fusing as Sunstone and Rainbow Quartz in order to babysit Onion and teach gems who literally went to war how to not die in a regular human household. Along the way, we learn Pearl's one true fear: human children. The episode reaches its climax with Steven bringing Onion to the Geminar, combining his responsibilities. Onion hypnotizes the gems by whistling through a piece of grass and leads them off of a cliff where they seem to fall to their deaths. No, seriously. That's what happens. Steven tries to fuse with Garnet to save them, but then Pearl tries to take him back to fuse instead, and then Amethyst comes in to remind us that she still exists, and Steven just passes out. Garnet lets out a monotone cry, then suddenly we pull out to reveal that the whole thing is just a PSA made by Sunstone. Then we see Sunstone doing a few more PSA type things, and that's just how it ends. Apparently the gems didn't die falling off the cliff, or maybe they never even fell off at all. No one really knows.
All in all, it was a really fun episode. Character-driven humor is my favorite type, as it feels like the characters are actually living in the moment, and you're laughing with them as the story progresses. The story may take things a little bit too far here and there, but given the fact that this probably isn't canon, I'm okay with that.
That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this little review of the last 2 episodes, and I'll see you next time.